So it's always disappointing when I develop a more comprehensive platform to raise voter turnout rate for Kentucky, the candidates who are going to be the chief election officer. So you have four candidates for the Secretary of State's race. You got Jason Belcher of Harold, Kentucky. You have Heather Renee French, former Miss America 2000. You have Jason Griffith of Whitesburg, and you have Jeff Sebastian of someplace. He's of someplace. So you have four candidates, okay? Again, Jason Belcher, Heather Renee French, Jason Griffith, and Jeff Sebastian. And so you have four people, right? So first of all, you got Jason Belcher. Jason Belcher is from Harold, Kentucky. He played Bad Frank Phillips for 2 years in a Hatfield and McCoy play. He wants a 50% turnout rate. So he wants to increase it from 12 to 50%. At the very least, he's close. You need one, but he's close. At least it'll be a legitimate democracy under Jason Belcher. He also understands that you need to raise the turnout rate. Air Force veteran. He's a father of two, published the author of military science fiction, such as The Shadow Effect. He's got a master's degree for international relations. He's written about national security issues. He's a trained historian. Now, these are his planks to his platform, which is the only thing that matters in an election, their policies. What will they get enacted? What will they get implemented? So Jason Belcher wants automatic registration. As soon as you get a driver's license or a state ID, you're registered to vote. He also wants early voting. He also wants same-day registration. He wants the restoration of felon voting rights, and he wants electronic voting. He wants longer hours of poll operation. Says the 15th Amendment gives Americans a right to vote regardless of previous incarcerations. So this is wonderful. He's reading the U.S. Constitution. He's going to, once you've done your time, then you deserve the right to vote to be restored. He's for early voting. Early voting would help. A lot of these things would help, but there's just such tiny incremental changes. He's going to extend the election day hours up to 8 p.m. He's not going to make it a holiday. Just make it a holiday so people, freedom and democracy holiday. Make it a state holiday, work free, so you got the entire day to look at the candidates, to think about the issues, and to make your best vote. Same-day registration, so that would be easy for folks to get registered the same day that they vote, so they don't have to worry about waiting a month prior. And then electronic voting. I don't trust the electronic voting. I don't care if you have the machines counting up the paper ballots, but I don't trust those Diebold machines. You can hack a Diebold machine in 3 minutes. So automatic registration I like, same-day registration I like, longer hours I like, early voting I like, return vote to low-level ex-criminals. He says it's consistent with the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. I agree with that. So I only disagree with the electronic voting. I like the other things, but I still think it's just not enough. Now we got Heather Renee French. So it's been essentially common wisdom that she's going to run. And when you look at name recognition, she's going to be the most popular one, but she hasn't really put out much of a platform. She does have a platform. First, a little biography. Heather Renee French is living in Louisville. She was Miss America in 2000. She has 2 kids. She married Steve Henry also in 2000, so she becomes Miss America and then marries the Lieutenant Governor of Kentucky. She was raised in Augusta, Kentucky, which has a population of 1,100 in Bracken County. She's a current Louisville resident. 2 daughters. She's got a college degree in science and a master's degree in architecture design. So she's graduated from architecture school. Now, she used to be the commissioner of Kentucky Department of Veteran Affairs. This is a major department, $100 million department with 900 employees. So she's ran a major department in the state of Kentucky under Steve Beshear and Matt Bevin. Now, when Heather's daughter, Harper, had filed to register to vote the same day her mother filed to run, Harper told the press that she didn't know who she was going to vote for, so you should never take anybody's vote for granted. Now, that's essentially, let's see, when she won Miss America in 2000, she had a platform of giving a damn about the homeless veterans, and she was Miss Kentucky and Miss Louisville in 1999. She's really not even that pretty. She's pretty, but there's way more beautiful, more beautiful, gorgeous women out there than Heather Renee French. So don't vote for Heather Renee French because she's nice and she's pretty, and because you know her and she won Miss America. Vote for her because she's got the best platform. Now, she has a platform. She actually does have some platform. It was hard to find. It wasn't on her website. but she's in favor of early voting. So just like Jason Belcher, Heather Renee French is for early voting. She wants to know about the unfunded mandates of same-day registration, which is kind of a stupid thing to say. Same-day registration, you get your driver's license, and then automatically you register to vote. So what is that? Just pushing a button, all that information you punched in for the driver's license, just, punch it in for the same-day registration. So it would be very dirt cheap. So you don't have to go to the legislature to get same-day registration. You might have to pass the law, but you don't need the money. You don't have to get the, allocations of money. So that's, a dumb comment. She said 3 Saturdays, and then she said 2 Saturdays, so she hasn't really come down for how long early voting should be. She's against open primaries. Now, I am sort of, mixed on open primaries. Colorado has open primaries. The problem with them is that you could get into the Republican race and then vote for the worst candidate, so you could sabotage, whatever primary you choose to vote in. Typically, if it works correctly, you actually would be, getting more people into your political party. If they're choosing your party, then the assumption is they like most of your candidates over the other people's candidates. She's going to apply for grants to get updated voter equipment. She's going to start early voting, 2 Saturdays, 3 Saturdays in advance. She wants to eliminate the required excuses for getting an absentee ballot. So this is a good thing, too. You have an absentee ballot where you got to, be out on work or military. You got to have a reason to get an absentee ballot. If you can get an absentee ballot for no reason whatsoever, well, then that means you're free to vote, as soon as you get your absentee ballot. So that could extend voting for, 2, 3, 4 weeks. She also wants to restore voting rights to the nonviolent, non-treasonous ex-felons. She says it's racist in its application. 1 out of 4 black men in Kentucky have no say-so in Kentucky's political process because their right to vote has been stripped away from them. So she says some good things. The cornerstone of American democracy is the right to vote. As your next Secretary of State, I will be the Chief Elections Officer of our Commonwealth. Only 30% participated in 2015 gubernatorial elections. We need to make voting easier, not harder. So that's a wonderful quote. Heather Renee French understands that we need to raise the turnout rate. So 4 years ago, the primary saw a 13% turnout rate. They're predicting 12.5%. So that means the turnout rate has gone down. The litmus test, if you've been a good Secretary of State, the turnout rate goes up every year. If you're not raising the turnout rate, well, just get the fuck out and, let somebody else do the job for you. So again, Heather Renee French, she's going to apply for grants to get up-to-date equipment, which, that's always a good idea. Extend polling hours on Election Day. So, that'll help. Start an early voting period 2 or 3 Saturdays prior, eliminating the excuse for absentee ballots. If you want one, you get one, and return ex-felons, or she said something, the non-treasonous and whatever. So she's going to return some of the rights to some of the people convicted of crimes because it's racist in its application. Essentially because name recognition is the #1 indicator of if a person is going to vote for you in Kentucky. It's a cultural thing. As long as Heather Renee French can string together a coherent sentence, now actually, as long as Heather Renee French can, look at Sarah Palin, so she don't even have to string together a coherent sentence. All she has to do is just get up there and talk. So if she can just get up in front of people and talk, then, she'll be all right. So she's got some, planks to her platform. So it will improve, but it's only marginally. I got a 15, 16-point plan, and I take some of their ideas, but I just put it in one, right? You could just bunch all these Secretary of State candidates, all their platform ideas into one plank. And then, you still aren't getting instant runoff voting, ranked choice voting, preferential voting. You're not getting public financed elections. You're not going to get initiatives. Hey, you're going to be... Okay. So the people that want to, protest against me, I'm sure you're advocating for initiatives for Kentucky, right? Because Kentucky needs initiatives and recall, and they have referendums, but they need to make easier referendums. Now, Jason Griffith is a Whitesburg person. His website is jasonsgriffith.com. He created character recognition software for license plates used by law enforcement and attorneys. He knows JavaScript, CSS3, HTML5, Angular 2, TypeScript, Green Sock, Air Force, Brat. He's a father of 2 college students. Now, he's in favor of early voting for everybody. So it seems like everybody's on board with early voting. Yes, the same-day registration. So that's both that was not Heather Renee French. Heather Renee French was not for same-day registration. Jason Belcher and Jason Griffith are both for same-day registration. You got to register a month in advance, but by the time election day, maybe you weren't thinking about it. So same-day registration allows people that hadn't registered to be able to register on the same day that they vote. Jason Griffith points out that the average 18-year-old moves 6 times before they're 30 years of age, so they're moving all over the place. So to think that they're going to update their registration, just same-day registration makes things easier. And here's an interesting contrast. So Jason Griffith is for same-day registration, but Heather Renee French is not. Jason Griffith is for open primaries. And he recognizes that both parties must agree to this, which they won't, so it won't go anywhere. But I like that he's thinking about things. This is ambitious. Open primaries. This allows anybody to vote in any of the primaries that they want to. So if you're an independent, Democrat, Republican, Green, or Libertarian, you get to vote in the Democrat primary, the Republican primary. If there's any other primaries, you get to choose which primary you want to vote for. That's open primaries. So you can sabotage the other people. So there is, that problem. But because Kentucky has no democracy whatsoever, open primaries is a great idea because it encourages people that like the platforms of the Republicans. Do you like the choices that the Republicans are offering, or do you like the choices that the Democrats are offering? It gives the voter much more power. And if you know things and you know that you can sabotage the election, if the Democrats have nobody that's running against each other, then, that's actually intelligent. So you're using your vote as a negative instead of as a positive. So I'm not totally opposed to open primaries for Kentucky. Kentucky needs a very ambitious campaign to get that turnout rate up. 12%, you need a coup d'etat. But Venezuela is not the problem with democracy, it's Kentucky. Kentucky's got the problem with democracy. So the U.S. military needs to intervene into Kentucky to fix their democracy. So I like that Jason Griffith is thinking. He's in favor of open primaries, and he wants to extend voting hours to 8 p.m., which is also the same exact issue as Jason Belcher, and also extend, so both Heather, or all three, Jason Belcher, Heather Renee French, and Jason Griffith all agree to extend polling hours on Election Day. So when the automatic registration happens, as soon as you apply for a driver's license or for a state ID, automatically it's registered. So that doesn't cost any money. I mean, it would just be just a little software change. So what, an hour for a software technician, $50. So to sit there and think that you have to get like millions of dollars to do same-day voter registration, Heather Renee French, it doesn't really know much about elections because, it's good for her to say that, unfunded mandates are bullshit like No Child Left Behind, but I think she's going a little wild and crazy there. So really, it all comes down to common sense. What's common sense tell you? Now, Jeff Sebastian, he's 43 years old. He's not going to do anything. He read the Constitution, and the Constitution says he just has to record everything. So he's going to go ahead and wiretap the Frankfurt Capitol. He's going to follow Bevin around and live, Facebook Live him, record everything he has to say. If he's not saying anything, or if he, goes to his office and shuts the door, there's nothing really Jeff could do. So that's all he's going to do. He's just going to record everything. He's just going to record this and record that, and he's going to write this down, and he's going to write that down. I mean, for what purpose or for why is he, he's just saying that's the only duty that he has to do constitutionally. Now, he does support some interesting ideas. He's for paper ballots. Andrew English of the Republicans support paper ballots. So that's not very progressive if Andrew English, a Republican, is pushing for it. And then all support the restoration of ex-felon voters' rights. So that's no different. So that's the two main planks that I see that he's got. Ultimately, because I know that he doesn't like millennials, that's the only thing I really truly believe that Jeff Sebastian believes. So I have zero confidence in Jeff Sebastian. He detests those damn millennials. He hates every single 90 million of every single millennial. Okay, yeah, the millennials, right? We got iPods and electric cars. Look at everything that the millennium has brought forth. We are excelling in technology like no one else. The millennials are the most evolved American generation ever who's been born. So the ones who got us the first black president, millennials. and soon to be the first socialist president. Millennials, you're welcome, America. So the anti-millennial Gen Xers, right, he's 5 years older than me, and for some reason he's going to hate everybody from that was born in 1982 to 1992. So if you're a millennial, especially if you're born between 82 and 92, but really if you're, shaking your fist at the 5-year younger generation, you should be shaking your fist at all those damn whippersnappers. So what the hell happened? What the hell happened? He went from 20 years old to 90-year-old in a day. He resonates with these old-ass haters. Oh, I'm going to take your ball, you damn whippersnappers. It's all your fault. Everything is your fault. And I don't hate anybody or any generation. I'm disappointed with the older generations, all the older generations, because, Jesus Christ, thanks for all the fucking poverty. Thanks, Gen X. Thanks, Gen X, for all the homelessness. Thanks for all the health problems that Kentucky has. Thanks a lot, Gen X. What the hell have you assholes been doing? And I guarantee you haven't been voting. You haven't been part of the political process. So you didn't give a shit about homeless. You didn't give a shit about the poor. You didn't give a shit about the meth. You didn't give a shit about the obesity, the illiteracy, the heart disease. You didn't give a shit about the child abuse. You didn't give a shit about the animal abuse. Just go on. Name a problem. Kentucky has it. And Gen X, what the fuck did you assholes do? So I'm very disappointed with the older generations. It's like, shit, now we have to come in here and clean your damn mess up. So Jeff Sebastian, he's, 5 years older than, me, 7 years older or so. Let's see, he's 6 years older than me. So those damn whippersnappers, right, as if, your leadership sucks, okay? So if you're going to sit there and, just say you're, better than everybody, fuck that bullshit. That's the me generation. That's the 70s bullshit. We don't need that shit. We're the millennials. We're brand new. We're the Y generation. We're the, the postmodern generation. Everything that came before us doesn't matter. Everything that comes after us matters. Every single person that's born is a brand new millennial. Jesus Christ. You're just going to get more and more millennials until there's nothing but millennials. So not just to hate 90 million people, but to hate all the future generations, to hate the children and the grandchildren too. Golly. So I don't believe he's going to do any of the things. He's talked about decent things. He talked about liking Muhammad Ali. He talked about, he said he liked ranked choice voting, but he doesn't think that he can do anything about it. He doesn't know that he can push for a law or advocate for any of these things. He just doesn't understand the job. He also wants to give away all his power. He says it was okay that Allison Grimes had got her power taken away from her from the State Board of Election. So you're going to become elected and just give up your power, just to let the State Board of Election, who is appointed, and they're not popularly elected. I want the person that's elected to be held accountable for the election process. These appointed assholes on the state election board, fuck them. The Secretary of State is the chair. So that means they're the facilitator-in-chief of the state board. They also rule over 120 county clerks. So what the state Secretary of State says when it comes to election goes. But he doesn't understand any of that. He's just going to go in there, give up the election power, and just start recording everybody. He admitted that he's Stan Lee in Kentucky, so he's not being serious. He's Stan Lee in Kentucky. He's a guy that makes a bunch of cameos in Marvel films and other films. So that's all Jeff Sebastian's doing. He's just making a bunch of cameos. He also has a very novel approach, so he's going to, get elected by hating the millennials, which is what Joe Biden said. So he's going to rush to defend Joe Biden. When I said something about Mitch McConnell said that it's not his job to provide jobs. If it's not the government's job to provide jobs, it's just for the private companies, so let's hope Walmart provides enough jobs. Whose responsibility is it to make sure we have jobs? If we don't have a job in America, you die. Without a job in America, you die. You work or die in America. So if it's not the leaders and it's not the capitalists, who in the hell is supposed to be creating these damn jobs? But the indication was that he rushed to defend Mitch McConnell. And he says, oh, I don't want to get hung up on your personal biases. Oh, my personal bias. Because you haven't watched what's been happening in America for the last 30 fucking years. He's not just bad for Kentucky, he's bad for the entire United States of America. And the rest of the 49 states knows this, and they have no idea why Kentucky keeps on voting for that asshole. Okay, Kentucky, why do you keep on voting for that fucking prick? Why in the fuck would you keep voting for that asshole? So it's not a personal bias, it's a public bias. His public policies absolutely suck. Just, follow his career. He's done nothing for anybody. He's against people voting, so he wants to make the turnout rate lower. He questioned that. Jeff Sebastian said, I'm not for sure if the turnout rate should go up. Of course it should. He wasn't for public financed elections, so he's just a disagreeable prick. He hates millennials. He hates the millennials. That's the only thing that I have any confidence with Jeff Sebastian. He has a novel approach when he appeals to the Republicans. So when it comes to the race, he's running for the Democratic nomination, and yet he's saying the Republicans they're good folks. So he's sitting there appealing to the Republicans in the Democratic race. So that's novel, right? He's not going to get a single Republican vote in the Democratic primary. I don't know if he knows that or not. Maybe he should, try to get some Germans to vote for him, too. Try to get some Russians to vote for him. Maybe get some Chinese. Get everybody from every other country to vote for you. That'd be a good idea. So not just the Republicans, but, why don't you get some people from Texas to vote for you? Not in Kentucky, but in Texas. So he's running on loving the Republicans, embracing the Republicans. He rushes to defend Joe Biden, old Grandpa Gropensmith. He rushes to defend Mitch McConnell. What kind of rainbow kid is this? Yeah, this isn't Uncle Tom. This guy is not going to do anything. He's opposed to public finance elections. He wouldn't do the $1 million to, give out to one person. So if you're not going to make people vote and you're not going to encourage people to vote, you just don't want people to vote, do you? He also, laughs about that whole Russian hacker thing. But I actually witnessed Jeff Sebastian debating with Patricia Stanton. Go ahead and search Patricia Stanton. Patricia Stanton, just like it sounds, S-T-A. This is a fake Facebook account. She was shitting all over Jeff Young, and then, I talked to her for a minute, but then I looked at her page, and I was like, what the hell is this about? And I just went ahead and blocked her. But Patricia Stanton. So he acts like there's no possibility of hackers DDoSing or getting into those Diebold machines, which can be hacked in 2 to 3 minutes. Yeah, there's no possible way they can influence or actually do criminal. So he's not even worried about security for the elections. He's the chief elections officer who's not even worried about security. He's not worried about turnout rate. He hates the millennials, but from the bottom of his gut. And he argues with fake Facebook accounts. There's no pictures of the lady. It was just 4 pictures. It's definitely an anonymous account. So is it a Russian hacker? Is it, some just dickhead in Kentucky? Who knows? It could be some old fat guy, right? But he was arguing with a fake Facebook account. So if he can't even tell the difference between a fake Facebook account, how is he going to actually run the security of the elections of Kentucky? One of the first times he got pissed off at me, he said that there was no racism in Kentucky. Oh, yeah. Have you not seen the Confederate flags, Jeff? Hey, Jeff Sebastian, there's lots of Confederate flags. There's lots of racism. When you see a Confederate flag, you see, those people are admitting that they're white trash losers. So there's plenty of racism in Kentucky. It was one of the worst parts about Kentucky. So to pretend that these problems aren't there, I guess the turnout rate is totally fine too. So, okay, he's going to say the same thing about returning the voter rights to ex-prisoners, paper ballots. That's the same as all the other ones. You'll get everything and more with any of these other people. And what the hell was Gen X? Yeah, the 1990s. What did the 1990s actually bring us? 1990s. I guess we got the internet, and then that brought some things. Gas was only 99 cents. So I can look at the millennials, and I can, constructively criticize some. There's some problems with the millennials. Millennials don't really vote. But then again, you didn't really set up a nice election system. Now, did you, Gen X? You didn't get instant runoff voting. You didn't get referendum recall initiative. Jesus Christ. Why the fuck would you vote? I mean, there's no option. There's no democracy. There's no choices, no initiatives, no questions. And then we're just supposed to vote between Tweedledee and Tweedledum? So what the hell did the Gen X generation do? They beat up Rodney King. Good job, Gen X. You beat up Rodney King. And that allowed O.J. Simpson to go free. So you were such racist cops that you allowed a murderer to go free because of the institutional racism. Jesus, is that all you done? Oh yeah, you give us the Clintons, right? That was a continuation of the Republican Reaganomics. So that's just a continuation of Reaganomics. It was free market. It was NAFTA, the crime bill, the welfare bill. These are right-wing Republican bills. This is not progressive. Bill Clinton was not a progressive. Hillary wasn't a progressive. And Hillary is still fucking with us today. Why are the Clintons still with us today? They didn't do shit in the 90s. You can't name one progressive thing that they did in the 90s, and you can't name one progressive thing that she stood for during her campaign. She was even opposed to universal health care. Just expand Obamacare. What happened to the Hillary Clinton, in the early 90s? She was good, but then she sold out to the insurance lobbyists, and then, sold out to the big banks, Goldman Sachs. She's part of the war machine. She's awful. She's terrible. You just listen to her voice. Look at her eyes. She's a psychopath. She doesn't give a damn about anybody. What the hell did the Clintons do that was so goddamn good? Thanks a lot, 90s. Yeah, you gave us the Clintons. You gave us Hillary Clinton. And she got us Donald Trump. So thanks a lot, Gen X, for all this poverty. Thanks a lot, Gen X, for all the war. They got us in the wars, too. Somalia, Serbia, bombs over Baghdad. What the hell? Jesus Christ. So I don't hate any of the generations. I do like the discussions of where are we and who are we. I'm a millennial because I turned 18 at 2000, so I entered the millennial as an adult. And that's your, coming of age years. If you were born in the 60s, you can't say you're a child of the 60s because you're actually, you were a child of the 60s, but you didn't experience the 60s. You experienced the 70s and the 80s as you were coming up. So if you were born in the 60s, that doesn't make you a 60s a person. The people that would have been born in the 40s and 50s, they would have been the kids that were, at Woodstock and that were, fighting the cops at the 68 Democratic Convention, that were burning the draft cards, that turned black power, that had the sexual revolution, that had the consumer revolution. So that was, the pinnacle of our American history. The 60s was. But and all the other generations suck. So, compared to the 60s, they're the best and they failed. So what the millennials need to do is they need to have a second enlightenment. We need a renaissance and then an enlightenment. And then we need to capture the 60s again and then make it actual America. Make it permanent. Don't go run back to establishment. Don't do the greed is good, Wall Street, American psycho bullshit of the 80s. That's all the 90s did. They were just, the 80s light. They just continued the 80s. Oh, yeah, the 80s was just so goddamn great, huh? In defense of Generation X, you did have Tupac and Biggie and Eminem, and you also had, what else? You had Fight Club. So, there's things that happened in the 90s that are worthy of note, but overall, the generations, millennials, maybe I'm biased, but I like the millennials better. So I would never, if I'm running for office, I wouldn't say, fuck you Gen Xers. Oh, you damn Gen Xers. God. I only hate the ones that hate me. You hate my generation, then fuck your generation. And if you want to have a lighthearted conversation about who we are, where we sit in the, situated in this timeline, are you Generation Z, Generation A, Generation B? Since I'm a millennial and I'm, middle-aged, so that means there's a lot of others. I'm Generation Y. So everybody that was between 82 and 92, so the 2000s is Generation Y, and then the 2010s and 2020s is Generation Z. After 2020, I guess Generation A. That's the easy way to do it, Generation Y, Z, and then go back to A, right? You went ahead and turned back the clock on the millennials, or on the millennium. We're back in the 19s, right? So this is 2019. So my kids and my grandchildren, they're going to have their own 60s and their own 70s and their own 80s and their own 90s. And Gen X, my God, for a 5-year difference, that would be like me just hating Generation Z. Oh, you Pokemon generation, I hate you young people so much. If anything, about my generation, I feel very disappointed. We got Obama, but, he turned out to be a right-wing person, too. So we got a black president. We had a symbolic change, but that's not good enough. So I am disappointed in my generation. If we were actually good leaders, then we would have shown Generation Z and Generation A how they need to go. But so that's why I fight for Bernie Sanders so much. I fight for Bernie Sanders from the bottom of my heart because, while there's a lot of good things about the millennials, overall, we're just like the 60s. We failed. So we could do better, and we could raise better generations than what we did in the 2000s. It was Teddy Roosevelt. We allowed the empire to expand. Yeah, the 2000s, it brought a lot of, technological process, but it also brought a lot of hardships, too. Joe Biden, 2005 bankruptcy bill. So, fuck Joe Biden, fuck. So of the 4 candidates, I would endorse Jason Griffith because of his open primaries. His open primaries makes it seem like he may be more susceptible to greater changes. Maybe he'll get his public finance elections, instant runoff voting, initiative, referendum, and recall. So I endorse Jason Griffith. Heather Renee French and Jason Belcher and Jeff Sebestia, sorry, but Jason Griffith, that's my guy.